Hello friends, acquaintances, and enemies of all ages. My name is Combat Bird, and about 8 months ago, I released my third YouTube video ever, and it was a review of a little game known as Grow Home. A game that I found to be quite charming, and while the video was short, it was my first time reviewing a game that I hadn't played previously. I like to imagine that in the past 8 months, not only has my YouTube channel grown, but that I've grown. I want to continue to improve my writing, editing, and video quality in general. And I thought, what better way to test that than to review a sequel of one of the earlier games I made a video on. That sequel is Grow Up. Our returning protagonist Bud has just finished another riveting game of tic-tac-toe with his ship, Mom, when suddenly the two of them get caught in an asteroid storm. Unable to dodge everything thrown at them, Mom is hit by a massive space rock that breaks her into several pieces. Those pieces of Mom, as well as Bud himself, fall towards the unknown planet below. After surviving the fall, Bud meets our new friend Pod, who is able to give Bud a better view of the land and detect the various components of Mom. The two of them must then work together to help recollect the missing pieces and bring them to the moon for Mom's repair. Okay, so the story isn't winning any awards, that much is clear. But I press on and see if this game can pull me in the same way Grow Home did. Immediately into the game, Pod introduces one of the newest mechanics of Grow Up. Remember in the original, you're able to grab a flower to help you float gently downwards, or a leaf to help you glide through the air. Well, they expanded upon this system greatly, and in my opinion, improved it. You're now able to collect a huge variety of plants during your adventure, and once you've collected one, it stays in your inventory permanently, allowing you to replant it whenever and wherever you want. Want a plant that will fling you across a gap? Or perhaps you want one that releases bubbles that float up into the air. There are a ton of different functions that you can use these for, and as you progress, you continue to unlock more and more. I should mention though, not all of the plants are useful. Some of them are just kind of weird. I don't think there's a single situation where I would need to grow this cactus, but hey, it's there if you want it. Early into your exploration, you're bound to find something very familiar looking. It's the same collectible crystals from the first game, but now they're enormous. Functionally, they're exactly the same. As Bud collects them, he unlocks various upgrades that in turn make it easier to find and collect more crystals. One thing I noticed was that the crystals now felt less hidden than they were previously. They're rarely on the underside of a rock, for example, and if you mix this with the fact that they're now huge, it makes finding them feel much easier. This felt kind of silly, but anyways. Pretty early into your crystal collection, you unlock a new ability for Bud. These are known as air brakes, and to be honest, they felt so incredibly overpowered. It was like having the flower from the first game, but it never ran out. So not only did they make the crystal collection easier, but they also give you some of Bud's stronger moves very early as a permanent addition? I was so confused. Were they trying to make the game easier? I mean, the first game in the series was already pretty easy, so why would they want something like that? It was at this point I discovered. You can actually explore this entire planet. It's no longer just one area. The game is so much larger now. Seriously, this is one of those games where you see something far out in the distance and you know that you can actually go there, and it's such a great feeling. And as I continue to progress in my crystal collection, the upgrades that Bud got were so unexpected because they make you feel incredibly powerful. Similarly to how you get the flower from the first game as a permanent upgrade, you also get a glider that resembles the leaf. This makes maneuvering around the world feel amazing. Now, don't get me wrong, you do get some new upgrades as well, like the ability to make Bud turn into a ball and shoot himself forward at Mach 5. Now, another thing you may remember from the original game was the ability to change Bud's outfit. At the time, this was purely aesthetic, but now each costume has a completely different effect. The bee costume will attract the various life of the world. The gardener costume will make Bud's plants larger and more powerful. The ninja costume makes Bud bouncier. The nocturnal costume makes it so that it's always nighttime, making crystals easier to find. And lastly, we have the aviator costume, which makes Bud's glider much, much faster. I'm so glad they finally added some function to these costumes. It actually gives me a reason to unlock them. Speaking of, while in the original game you unlock costumes in a variety of ways, which included collecting crystals, in this game there are simply time trials known as pod challenges. These are about what you'd expect, as you have to get through all of the rings within a certain period of time. But it's a nice change of pace and really helps show you how much Bud has progressed. If you attempt a late game challenge without having the proper upgrades, it's gonna feel next to impossible. On the topic of that though, one thing I noticed was that situationally, Bud can actually feel a little too powerful. I know that sounds silly, so let me explain. There are certain time trial events that have pretty obvious paths. They either want you to use plants or platform around to get through the rings. But since I was trying to 100% the game anyways, whenever I saw a crystal, I just collected it. This resulted in most of the time trials expecting me to do it one way, just to have me do it with the jet glider since it's so much faster. Or sometimes it felt like the game wanted me to climb to the top of a very high set of islands. But it was much easier to, well, use the jet glider again. I guess that what I'm saying is the jet glider is really powerful, and while it isn't an issue necessarily, it did keep me from doing some of the trials correctly. I know that's a pretty insignificant thing to complain about, but I thought I should mention it. Now, being that Grow Up has some pretty decent changes from Grow Home, in a lot of ways it still sticks to its roots. There is still a large amount of fun and silly wildlife that you can mess around with. There are still fun little moments of dialogue that help give the characters personality, and there are still things like star plants which help our hero in his ascent. The game even has callbacks to the original game, like how Bud has some stuffed versions of the animals from the first game in his ship, or how some of the costume descriptions refer to them as fan favorites. One thing I do miss was the ability to capture and collect the various animals of the game. In this one you do have little charming descriptions of all the plants, but that's no longer the case with the animals. I can understand if some players thought that it was a bit too inconvenient to drag all of the animals and plant life to the telerouter, but as someone who enjoys getting 100% completion on certain games, I was disappointed that there was no longer a reason to do that. Speaking of, I did get 100% completion, which I was so happy about, and similarly to the first game, the reward for collecting every crystal is infinite power, meaning that you can use your jetpack or jet glider infinitely. Wait, I just remembered. Planting the various plants of the game also costs power. Does that mean... Oh my god, this is amazing. Honestly, I loved Grow Up so much, and despite it having pretty mixed reviews, I would say it's superior to the first. If you enjoyed the first game, you're going to enjoy Grow Up. If the first game really wasn't for you, then this definitely isn't going to change your mind. It's just more of the same with some quality of life changes and new content, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know if there's a game you want me to make a video on down below, and as always, have a wonderful rest of your day. Oh, and Bud totally should have died in the intro where he falls to the planet. Just saying.